Hey everyone, hi, I'm Krista. This is Lemniscata Live number 9, take 2. If it doesn't work, my internet, it's kind of new in this building and maybe I'm not close enough to it or something. So if it doesn't work, I will just redo it. And it's already gonna be weird redoing it again, but I need to introduce myself again as if I'm just starting. Hi everyone, this is Lemniscata Live number 9. I'm Krista Arias, and I'm coming to you live from my ancestor altar behind me. And I was just saying that I'm smoking. I'm not really a smoker in terms of like a habitual smoker, but I do really respect tobacco as medicine, and especially from my my ancestors. This tobacco has been sitting on my altar here. When we invited all our ancestors to come and join us and help me, and so I'm kind of imbibing, hopefully, some of their wisdom here. I mean, I shouldn't say hopefully. That's like the. I was saying that I always get nervous using this technology, which fits right into what I'm talking about today: post-apocalyptic theory. So that's the title of the live today. Thanks for coming, and I hope that the other people that were on will find their way back. Otherwise, you can watch this later. So thanks, Dina, for letting me know it's better. So yes, one of my projects right now is running the Lemniscata Mystery School for Mamas, and that's it's an emerging gathering place for healing and ancestral healing, lineage repair, understanding seasonal medicine, and really centering mothers and the wisdom of mother. So anyway, if you want to know more about that, you can contact me. But basically, I'll add the title in this afterwards, and there'll be a link. So, okay, so I'm going to dive right in. So post-apocalyptic theory, I've referred to it a little bit. It's sort of like something that I'm working with and under and developing and using. So I wanted to talk a little bit about it today. I'm going to start with a story, as I often do. Oh, Angelica. Hola. So I'm going to start with a story. So the prelude is that I've often felt kind of like a misfit in the world, and like I'm learning all these things about, I had an unassisted birth with my second baby. The way I started studying midwifery, and I didn't really continue because I really came to believe that birth belongs to the mother, not to midwives, and that that as mothers and sisters, this is something that we carry. It's a medicine we carry, of being together in birth, etc. And so I didn't really fit into the midwifery community or model. Drinking raw milk since 15 years ago from someone's underground garage, and having goats in our backyard so that we can have raw milk in our home, where that was the only real legal way to have it. And we still have goats in our backyard. One of our goats is about to kid, and so we'll have milk again soon. Just things like this. And I've always just felt like I'm an exile and an outcast. And so I was sitting with with David, my baby daddy, partner, husband, whatever. I just had this epiphany. Okay. I was like, oh my God, everything that I've learned, another piece of it is that I had been going down this rabbit hole of the apocalypse, and like really getting myself I was getting freaked out, awakening to the possibilities that might happen if infrastructure collapses, and et cetera, et cetera. Hi, Lisa. So I So I don't know if I mentioned this on this one or the last one. I'm not really a smoker, so though I'm managing to smoke most of the cigarette. Anyway, so I sat there and I was like, oh my gosh, David, I'm an apocalyptic midwife. I'm an apocalyptic, chef. I'm a great, Angelica. I come back and you can watch the replay. Check in and watch the replay. I'd love to have you, and I'm sort of amassing these, and it'll be up for 48 hours. So come back within the next 48 hours and you can watch. Otherwise, it will be in the membership portal, which is really affordable, and because I know that mothers aren't the most wealthy market. Okay, so anyway, I was sitting with David and I was like, oh my gosh, I am a post-apocalyptic, or I think at the time I was like apocalyptic. And then I said, so here's the story part. That's the prelude, here's the story. The story part is that I said this to someone out loud, an actual midwife. And she said, oh, I said, she, yeah, what do you do? And it was sort of a midwifery context because she's a midwife or whatever. And I said, oh, I said, I'm not a midwife. I'm an apocalyptic midwife. And she said, just immediately her response was, oh, so suturing and all of the emergency, like sort of like medical stuff. And I was like, oh gosh, that did not land right, because that's totally not what I meant. That was not what my epiphany was. My epiphany was completely different. So so that kind of leads into what I want, some of the things I want to like kind of tease out today, and the difference between apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic, right? So some would say, and it's very arguable, that we are in the apocalypse and that these are apocalyptic times. There's so many angles of so many troubling things happening. It's hard to even hang on. So, arguably we're in the apocalypse, and we still have access to all of these, high tech. Like I'm here talking to people virtually, and that's not, that's, or maybe we're definitely, see, I know all the lingo now. We're pre SHTF, right? That's shit hits the fan. It's like a shit hits the fan event, and that's like a thing, SHTF. I remember being like, what are they talking about? Because I'm getting into all these prepper things and stuff, and it's shit hits the fan, meaning like some big thing happens where it's either peak oil, or it's some sort of grid down event, or some sort of economic martial law. It can be all kinds of different things, and I'm not going to get into those now. That's like certainly stuff to consider. But what I'm wanting to do is make a distinction between apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic. So I'm sort of like, okay, if I'm not an apocalyptic midwife, et cetera, chef, then I'm a post-apocalyptic, because there's this sort of idea that the apocalypse will be like chaos, and emergency medicine will be useful then. But then there'll be, after whatever they say, 2 or 3 years, when probably me will be dead, but if I survive, there'll be some people surviving and starting to rebuild from really the ground up, hopefully literally from the earth up. And so, at that time, there'll be no grid, there'll be no oil, there'll be no machines, there'll be no, you're not going to be able to do a lot of things emergency medicine wise that we have now. So that's the first thing, is this separation, the difference between apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic. I also want to, okay, so then I want to talk a little bit about just, what I'm responding to also, because it's not just about my freak out about the apocalypse. It's also a reaction. It's my, oh gosh, look at my hair. Beautiful. Okay, so it also has to do with my response to postmodernism, which has really taken hold in the academy, and I find myself in it, and it's kind of a, so postmodern theory, I'm going to read a little definition from Wikipedia, or an explanation. It says, while encompassing a wide variety of approaches and disciplines, postmodernism is generally defined, I'm reading it, as an attitude, or by an attitude of skepticism, irony, and rejection of the grand narratives and ideologies of modernism. So it itself is an ideology that rejects certain other ideologies beforehand. Often calling into question various assumptions of Enlightenment rationality. You know, roughly, you know, things are, you know, that there's objective reality. So consequently, common targets of postmodern critique include universalist notions of objective reality, morality, truth, human nature, reason, science, language, and social progress. So postmodern thinkers frequently call attention to the contingent or socially conditioned nature of knowledge claims and value systems, situating all of these as products of particular political, historical, or cultural discourses and hierarchies. Accordingly, postmodern thought is broadly characterized by tendencies to self-referentiality, epistemological and moral relativism, pluralism, and irreverence. Okay, so basically it's a very, very strong rejection of tradition. Now this is something like, because postmodernism is really appealing, pluralism, when you have, you know, like as in this era of like, especially like indigenous cultural revitalization, et cetera, there's this idea of, you know, of pluralism, like not, like sort of like the colonial grand narrative isn't correct, and it's not the only thing, and can we have many different things living together? But it goes beyond this, and I think, and this is just something to sort of think about, is that it challenges all tradition. It challenges all, let's see, reading this, reason. So postmodernism really does reject reason as a model for knowing. Now this can be great because we can, you know, poeticality, all kinds of things then can be appreciated in a way that they've been rejected. But the danger is that we can't even, you know, to say something like 1 + 1 = 2, or what I actually perceive and see is real is, it just isn't anymore. It all becomes relative, and there's no kind of place to start from. And so I'm not, so when I talk about, so I'm like, okay, well, what comes after postmodernism? So we have like, if we just say like there's rationalism, and then there's sort of, I don't know if you want to say poesis or some other kind of knowing. I'm not wanting to say, oh, let's get rid of poetics. I'm a poet, so I really, but what comes after postmodernism, it's like, okay, here we are. It's like, these are apocalyptic times. And in the work that I do, in how I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about, well, what happens once we're, Avalon's like freedom, right? But it's a very different freedom post-apocalyptically than right now. Because what will it mean when there, so it sort of leads to the question that I talk about of like, so what does that mean? Are we rationalist? Do we use logic, or do we use poetry? And is it all about a subjective experience? What happens? What are we even doing? So the question that I have, so I wrote this. It says, that to me, post-apocalyptic theory, it's partly a response to postmodern theory, and partly a response to the myriad meaninglessnesses that we bypass daily, which is, okay, I'm going to say a result of postmodern theory. And I don't think it's just a result. Postmodern theory is also just looking at what's happening. So post-apocalyptic theory asks not what needs to be disempowered of meaning, but what meaning can we find in the face of the present apocalypse? Or what survives when we feel or vision or inquire into a post-apocalyptic world soul? Like 3 years after the SHTF, this is like, if you're like, so what does have meaning? This is what I'm saying. If you vision forward into a post-apocalyptic world, not just in the crash, but afterwards, exactly, Avalon, exactly, afterwards, when what we have are our hands, and we have the earth, and we have each other, and we have the cosmos. We have, we it's kind of like we will have to recover our indigenous or our ancestral ways. And so, let's see, so what's the point? I don't know. So then I think about, okay, about midwifery. When I say a post-apocalyptic midwife, I'm talking about someone, that in that time, we will have to give birth back to mothers. We will have to trust the earth. We will have to, there's this great story that I use in one of the courses that I teach to really talk about it's related to unassisted birth, but like how, oh, hey, Laura, hey, Sky, Patricia, it's my cousin. Anyway, so there's this, I don't know, there's this story, it's a news story from Australia where a mother had a baby, she had twins, and, they weren't doing well, and the doctor, she was in the hospital, and the doctor said, this one's gonna die, this one's okay. So they took the healthy one and put the healthy one in an incubator or something, and they gave her and her partner, husband, they gave her the dying baby to say goodbye. I get distracted reading the comments, but so she sits down. So they have this baby that is going to die. The doctor said the baby's going to die. The baby's dying. It's dead essentially, and just say goodbye. And so they did, and they just, over the course of like half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour, they told all the things that they had planned to do and said how much they loved him. I think it was him. And anyway, the baby started coming back, being held by its mother. So I just use this story as an illustration of all of the medical science. They did everything that they could do to resuscitate that baby when its best chance was to be with its mother. We know about kangaroo care. And this is what we will have to return to in post-apocalyptic world. We'll have to be like, the baby will be with its mother and it will survive or it won't survive. Maybe we won't have an apocalypse. You can just, you can take with this what you want, or but to, you know, if we think forward to what would we, you know, what would we do if we didn't have all of this technology? We would just go straight to that, and maybe the baby wouldn't even seem like it was going to die, because it would have, you know, maybe all these machines and things that we have, it aren't actually giving us the best chance. Okay, so, and it includes accepting death and being present for, because there, you know, death, it happens, you know, whether it's with our elders or our babies or mothers, or, you know. And so one of the things, another thing is like being in touch with our, the healing art of weeping and of wailing and of grieving, and knowing how to honor a soul as it comes in and as it comes out in a good way. Humans are the best incubators, yes. So that's exactly the point. And so, so this is post-apocalyptic theory, and yeah, and the earth, you know, a mother being on the earth and having her baby is probably even more powerful. And I mean, literally, like, connected, uninsulated with the earth, and total acceptance of the cycles of life and death, which is controversial to talk about, you know, when we get to these things about, you know, especially midwifery, babies coming in. It's like a bit precious cargo, you know. So the question is, you know, I sort of joke, it's kind of like the classic, what would Jesus do? The question is, instead, what of my self, life, values, goals, privileges, etc., will still be needed, possible, of service, you know, once the rebuilding commences, once the dust settles, and those who are left open their eyes and begin again. You know, like what? And so, yay! I didn't know that. Avalon says, I'm a free birther too. So, so right now there's all kinds of things, right? Legal system. That's a big reason why, you know, child protective services, all these things. This is a big reason why people don't do these things right now, which brings me to my third kind of like teaching point, or like thing that I want to talk about. And that is so here we are, we're here, right? We're not 3 years after the SHTF. So I'm not saying, obviously I'm not saying don't use the internet, right? I mean, this whole 5G technology that's coming in is really controversial. But I'm not saying don't use it. But what I am saying is, when you ask yourself this question, it can help just sift things out. Not that you will never use those things, but what are you going to put your most energy into? What are you going to give your attention? What are you going to build? What are you going to learn? And so, you know, in every area, whether it's fashion, clothes, whether it's shelter, whether it's birth, whether it's death, whether it's, you know, all of these things, this is a question that can help us you know, build a world, or build our skills, and also a theory or culture, or community agreements, or whatever you want to call it, that are actually sustainable. And, you know, you think about, you know, I mentioned sort of like there's indigenous renaissance and revival. And that's something that I'm a participant in. And it's something that I ask, even in that sphere, you know, what is really important to focus on right now? And am I going to be fighting legal battles? Am I going to be fighting, what kind of, and so for me, this is something that I can use, because ultimately, when this, SHTF thing happens, we will be forced to live or die based on whether we can reclaim our own earth-based reality. And the more we can work on it now, the more likely we can avoid an SHTF. So I'm not saying it's inevitable, but I am saying that it is like a touchstone. It's something that we can use to help us figure our shit out, a little bit better. And I can feel like I have purpose in the world. No, we all, meaning and purpose is important for human beings, and we are meaning makers. And so just saying, hey everyone, hey Kelly, sorry, I forgot what I was saying. So I wrote a little thing. So we're still now, and maybe we can prevent this SHTF. I probably talked about it in the last video. SHTF is like, or maybe it was before you came on. SHTF, it means shit hits the fan, and the preppers talk about it like a SHTF event is the thing where it's like the grid goes down, or there's martial law, or some big kind of catastrophic event where we're just suddenly forced, and there will be stockpiles. Like, people are stockpiling for this SHTF, right? So that's one way, and I'm not saying you shouldn't, but I would argue, I guess, that that's not as important as building the skills, because if you can't feed yourself and you can't support a woman having a baby, or someone in your community can't, then we're not going to make it. So, and I guess that this has been my remedy for the kind of, for the hopelessness that one can feel in the face of like digging into all the kind of prepper SHTF stuff, is, be prepared, but also work on building what will be needed long term. And not just long term, but if we can build it now, we can maybe avoid this big SHTF event. So that's basically a little summary. And this is, this is a lot of what my work is around, is building the skills. When we ask that question, the skills, both physically, materially, but also psychically and community-wise, these are the things that we're going to need to either prevent or recover from an SHTF event. So Dean is saying, when the financial crisis hit 11 years ago, my husband asked our financial advisor, what happens if the dollar crashes and becomes worthless? And he said to us, well, then you better become a good farmer. Yeah, exactly. So that's, I teach a course it's a permaculture course, but it's really it really focuses on social permaculture, and has a spiritual dimension even, because we're going to need even more than being a farmer. Like, if you know all the skills, we're going to need to be able to be resilient and adaptive, and to be able to be connected and be able to listen to the earth, because things change. What plants are good for changes. What, in terms of their medicinal value, they can change. And they do change because they're there for us. We're in a relational kinship with them, and we can help each other. So if we can't we can't talk to plants, it's not going to really matter if you know what it used to be good for. So that's why the permaculture course that I teach really focuses on, or it really has a foundation and a call to a sort of deeper thing, as a deeper foundation that has to do with girding up our connection, our earth-based connections. And that gets thrown out, but like, what does that really mean? And it has to, you know, and a lot of it has to do with healing our own trauma with actual methods, not sort of the idea of healing a trauma and naming it, and just naming your trauma and kind of coming to terms with it isn't gonna cut it. Okay. So that's another big piece, is like, I was like, oh, all of this trauma work that I'm doing is going to be helpful, because we'll be in a situation where we're living in postmodernity, and we are going to need to like put ourselves back together. So there you have it. If you want to learn more about that, you can, you know, in somewhere, I don't know, you can find out more on my site, or you can message me or whatever. I'm Small Potatoes, so I am available. Anyway, I think that is basically it. I would love to hear from you if you have thoughts or questions, or if you would like to join this emergent group of mamas working on this together in the Lemniscata Mystery School. And thank you very much for taking the time. I mean, it was kind of last minute that I came on, and thank you for so many people for coming out. I think that's everything. And anyway, so signing off. Ciao.